and basically you can dust off any of your old gear and trade it in with KEH, and we're going to give you a 25% bonus towards new Sony gear. That's lenses and cameras. And the link for all of the information on how you can register for a virtual appointment is in the description below.
This is a fantastic promotion. If you've got camera gear, doesn't matter which brand or what lens you have, you make an appointment with KEH, they'll assign a value, what they're going to take from you, and then you get an additional 10% if you spend it in the store, and a 15% bonus if you're spending it on Sony gear.
Oh, let's start again. Hey guys!
Are we? We're all good?
Okay. All right, so it seems like everything's finally moving smoothly, and again, thank you again for all of your patience. The other thing I want to let you know about is that there is a Sony accessory and lens sale on in Canada right now. We ship all across the Canada, if you didn't know that already, so check out the link below in the description. But basically, yeah, we just wanted to talk about the Sony Alpha 1, and this camera is very exciting for us and for Sony because it's the first time that Sony has actually put out a full-fledged flagship camera that has all of their best tech without any limitations.
Yeah, this is the wish list camera. Every feature you want in a camera, this camera has it.
Yeah, and before they had some top-end models like the A7R4 that was the high-resolution model. There was the A9 II, which was like the sports and action fast camera, and then the new A7S3, which was kind of the video and the low light camera, and now this kind of all encompasses everything. And we had a good time with it, and it was interesting living on the edge, being able to shoot at 30 frames per second.
So this is crazy that we have 50 megapixels worth of resolution that we can shoot at up to 30 frames per second. So the creative options you have with this are really impressive.
Yeah, so before we get into some of the questions that we have, as well as the questions that you guys have, which I'm sure you're just burning to ask them since we kept you waiting for so long, and I'm so sorry, but we're gonna hand it over to one of the Canadian Sony support members, and these guys are awesome. These are the connection to Sony for pro photographers. So if you're a full-time professional and you have Sony gear, you should check out their pro support services, because these guys will hook you up with all kinds of benefits that really help professionals just do their jobs. And so I'm going to hand it over to Mandeep, who's going to give you guys an overview of the Alpha 1, and then we'll get to some questions after that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Evelyn. It's so great to be here. Joining me is Jadu and Patrick, as well as Pierre as well. We're the team from Sony Canada here, and we're just absolutely delighted to have a conversation with you guys. Feel free to engage in the conversations, guys. There's a live chat and all that stuff. There's a live chat happening as well, and feel free to engage in all this as well. But let's get right into it. So Evelyn did talk a little bit about some of the features about the Alpha 1 as well. I'm sure you guys can see my screen here. Just going to go over some of the quick highlights, and then we're going to open it up to a little bit of a panel discussion for you guys as well. So like Evelyn said, guys, this is really the flagship camera. This has taken technology basically from the A9 Mark II, the A7R4, the A7S3, and put it into a blender, came up with this crazy mix, and now introducing the Alpha 1 flagship camera. It's really giving you that unprecedented speed and resolution. It's just absolutely crazy what this thing can do. A lot of our guys have actually gotten the opportunity to play around with this in the last few weeks, and it's just been fantastic. Just wanted to highlight a couple of the features with this real quick. We already talked about the 50 megapixels at 30 frames per second. Guys, keep in mind that that's really giving you information of 1,500 megapixels per second. Information, again, that's really just unprecedented, and just that speed, that resolution is just unbelievable. One of my favorite things, guys, about this is that the focus calculations is actually happening at 120 times per second, which is just nuts. We saw something like this on the A9 Mark II with 60 calculations per second, and now this is completely double that with 120 times per second calculations. Of course, you guys know that the camera does go up to 8K as well, and there's a lot of misconception here, guys. I just want to make that clear right off the bat that the 8K video format doesn't have any time limit on it. You can record unlimitedly for as long as your battery lasts, or forever how much space you have on your memory card. Of course, the entire operations of the camera has also been brought over from the S3 as well, as far as the touch operations go in the menu, and it's just an abundance amount of connectivity as far as bringing in Ethernet cables and full HDMI puts as well. I'm going to leave this on the screen just for a second, guys, so you get acquainted with just some of the features that the Alpha 1 actually has to offer. Again, highlighting just a few of these things with the 50 megapixels at 30 frames per second. Again, giving you that unprecedented speed and resolution as well. The speed, guys, 30 frames per second, guys, that's really giving you that 1500 megapixels per second information. And all of that is done completely with a blackout-free display as well. The EVF is actually one of my favorite things on this camera, guys. It's the world's first EVF to actually have that sort of refresh rate at 240 frames per second. So it's going to be able to keep up with all your fast moving objects and tracking and all that stuff. The workflow, the connectivity, just overall, guys, this really is truly a flagship camera. So I'll leave that up on the screen as we kind of go through it, and maybe we can address some of the questions that you guys might have.
Cool. Yeah, thanks so much. So to get things started, one of the things with the video 8K recording is pretty remarkable that you're able to continue doing recording without a time limit. And I'm wondering if you can talk about how you're able to do that without really a fan cooling system. What technology is there to be able to enable that?
What's your secret sauce?
Yeah, what is the secret sauce? Tell us everything.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll get into it, and I'll hand it over to some of my team members as well. But basically, the way that it works is that instead of kind of having like one spot where the heat sort of generates through, the entire camera is actually being cooled off throughout the entire camera, letting heat kind of dissipate throughout all areas of the actual camera body itself. Pat, you guys want to elaborate on that? What do you guys think?
Pat, you need to
Pat, you gotta unmute.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I was saying that actually, starting with the A7S III, we came out with a couple of new innovations that really helped with the cooling of the camera and the sensor inside the camera, so you can get that unlimited recording time. One was the way that we connected that moving sensor, because we have image stabilization there. So how do you couple that moving sensor to a plate that radiates the heat? We came up with a new graphite system. We call it a graphite sigma system, and that's how it can connect to the radiating source and still be able to move and transfer a lot of that heat. And not only do we use the entire back of the camera to radiate the heat out, we also use the sides now.
Interesting.
That is really cool. Another question that I've been really curious is about the RAW files. And so this is the first time that you guys have offered lossless compressed RAW files. And of course, there's been a lot of talk about previous cameras that have offered lossy compressed and then of course uncompressed RAW. And I want to know how have you been able to do this, and why is this the first time that you've been able to offer lossless compressed RAW? What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so with the lossless compressed file, basically you still get the full image resolution of 50 megapixels per second, as you can see on the screen as well. And the way that I usually take a look at this is that, when you're shooting RAW and you convert that over to a DNG sort of file format, you still get the entire capabilities of a RAW file, being able to adjust everything in post-production, but it just basically reduces the file size from 50 to 80%, and still giving you like a real superior image quality as well. So there's no real degradation in the image quality itself. It just really reduces the overall file size as well. So think about it this way: if you're shooting and you have one memory card on you, you're out and about traveling or street photography, you left the rest of the cards at in the hotel room. You still have a couple hours left to go, for your shoot. You can switch over to the lossless compressed, and that allows you to just get that much more images on it without actually reducing your overall quality as well.
Yeah. I just want to add, there's two types of compression in the pictures. There's the compression that you can apply on the file itself that will reduce the file size without touching any of the pixel. And then there's the reduction of the image data within the pixel themselves. So compressed RAW use both. Uncompressed RAW don't use any of them. Lossless compressed only uses the compression on the file itself. It's exactly the same as using a zipped file. When you zip a file on a computer, it's the same idea. So no loss of detail on the pixel size, but only a smaller file size.
Okay, so why did you take so long to offer this awesome file format? Is it the processing power that you needed?
Well, I think it's a combination of two things. One is definitely customer demand is one of the reasons why it's in the new camera. For example, we only had compressed RAW in the past, and due to customer demand, we included uncompressed RAW. And I think you hit the nail right in the head. Also, the new Alpha 1 does have extremely high processing power. It actually has two front-end LSIs in there, or you can say two big Beyond processors in there, and that gives you lots and lots of processing power. That's how we can do 8K. That's how we can do 50 megapixels 30 times a second, and then that's also how we can do all that processing so quickly, right?
Yeah, that's very cool. So the other thing I'm interested in is 50 megapixels just isn't enough for me sometimes. So you guys offer the super high res multi-shot, but you have to do it in post. You have to do it through a computer. With all that processing power in the computer, is there plans in the future to be able to do it in camera?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So we never comment.
Processing power maybe up to maybe the 4-image compilation, but once you get up to the 16 image, that might require some more processing power to put that one together.
Or we can go with the standard answer. We can't comment on features that happen.
Another thing that I was curious about is with the electronic viewfinder. And for people who haven't had the opportunity to actually look through the beautiful electronic viewfinder, it is 9.44 million dots.
It is absolutely gorgeous. It's
Yes.
huge.
And the other exciting thing is it has a very high refresh rate of 240 frames per second in certain modes. But what I want to know is when you're shooting at the highest frame rate and the highest refresh rate, are you still seeing that high resolution, or what is happening in the viewfinder? What are we seeing?
So when you're at 240 frames per second refresh rate, it will go down to the 33 degrees of field of view. I was actually speaking with a sports photographer who actually wanted to have the 41 degree, what I call the IMAX view. And I said, all you had to do was drop it down to 120 frames per second. And he was like, wow, that's all I really needed anyway. He's used to cameras that are refreshing at 60 frames per second. And again, just based on what his expectation was, 120 was already wow for him. So 240, it brought it down to 33 degrees. And depending if a person's wearing glasses, if they're using glasses, then they might prefer the 33 degrees. Yeah. But I myself love the 41, so I will drop it down to 120 frames per second.
And keep in mind that even if you crop to 33 degrees, there's still as many pixels in that area than on the next best EVF, which is like 5-point-something million dots.
Yeah.
Well, and that kind of brings up another point about fine-tuning this camera, because one of the things that we found is with the autofocus in particularly, you were able to fine-tune it more so than other cameras and be able to set it up in such a way that if you didn't want necessarily the focus confirmation every time, but you're shooting at 30 frames per second, you could put it in release mode. And so I'm wondering if you could speak to that and talk about optimizing the camera for shooting fast action, and what that means for users. Like, what kind of photographers do you think would enjoy this this ability to be able to fine tune things like the high frame rate autofocus?
Good question, Evelyn.
Very good question. Yeah.
Because we did get some questions about the best settings when you're shooting the high burst rate.
So we found when we were shooting at the university, especially with runners coming directly at us, it took a few passes to kind of fine-tune the camera to get the best results.
Yeah, so one of the things that I would, if you use that exact example of a runner running directly to you, one of the things I would definitely choose is the tracking mode, which in the menu, it's the very last mode in tracking, and there's several different tracking zones you can pick as well. So I'll definitely pick that. So so what's one thing to actually be able to shoot fast, and another thing to actually be able to focus quickly. The A1, the Alpha 1 actually has a biggest advantage there, being able to calculate at 120 frames per second. But you got to keep in mind too, you want to match it up with a lens that can actually keep up with that amount of
You beat us to the
instruction.
We're getting to my next question, Patrick.
Oh, okay.
And we got to fly for that too.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
So-
Yeah, go ahead.
No. I was just wondering if I answered your question or not.
Yeah, I think so. And it kind of reminds me a little bit about the G Master lenses and how prior to this camera, we kind of thought that Sony was going in some kind of direction, because with the linear thrust motors that are inside a lot of the G Master lenses, the lens technology seemed to be way beyond what the cameras were capable of doing in terms of those autofocus calculations. And there's still even room for improvement for what the lenses would be able to do. And so can you talk a little bit about how those lenses were developed over maybe the last 5 years or longer in order to be designed to match up with this technology? Like, how long has Sony been putting this technology in the works?
Do you want me to take that one, guys? Or
Yeah, go for it.
okay, so actually, you're right. It has improved over different iterations, and I think Vinay just brought that that slide up on the screen there. In general, we've kind of moved away from the mechanical type autofocus system, where we convert rotational energy into back and forth energy, right? So there's a lot of things that's a disadvantage of. One is that it takes more power. Another thing too is that there's mechanical things like friction you have to overcome, and torque to be able to move your lens that quickly. So we've moved to, if you see on the right hand side, we've moved to linear type actuators, and we have several different types. Originally we used a linear type motor, and the reason why we didn't use it on everything in the past is because there wasn't enough torque in that type of motor in the past. But then with the invention of our new XD linear ones, we have the advantages of like SSM motors and the speed and accuracy of a linear motor, but the torque that we're used to before with SSM motors, right? So that's our kind of penultimate type of actuator that allows us to move lens groups in a wide range. And also very quick and very accurate and at various different speeds.
Yeah.
Our next one as well is our direct drive system. A direct drive system, actually, we use that in the lens like I'm using right now. This is the 2470 2.8. You can see how quickly, now smoothly, it focuses back and forth. That's actually the same type of motor that we use in our sensor. So that's what does the sensor stabilization, so you know how quick and how accurate that type of autofocus is.
Yeah, so I guess the point is a lot of the credit almost needs to go to the lens design as well, because we put one of the older lenses that we had, and we totally noticed a difference. Like, if you have an old lens, you don't have, I don't know why you wouldn't put a G Master lens on it, but if you have an older lens, it's just not going to be able to keep up with that autofocus system. And so you can definitely see that the sweet spot and able to take advantage of that autofocus technology is going to come when you're pairing it with the good glass, the high-end
No,
G
like
Master
the
lenses.
135 G Master was incredibly fast.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like the 600
That's my
f4
favorite
was
lens.
crazy fast.
Oh yeah, and
And
we did get a
the
chance to
lenses
do like the 400 or the 600, but we just know from previous experience that those lenses would just be ballin' on this camera.
Hey, Evelyn, just speaking of those lenses real quick, I just wanted to show you guys real quick some of the lenses that are actually are fully capable of giving you that 30 frames per second as well. And this is a great chart to kind of look at and in comparison to see which lenses are actually really going to give you the best performance on the Alpha 1 as well. So I'll leave that up just for a second as well for you to get familiar with all the lenses that you could get that 30 frames per second as well. Because like you said, some of the older lenses will definitely give you a little bit of that slower focus for when you're shooting faster sports or things like that. But these are the lenses that are going to give you that sort of performance. And then there's a couple of these lenses, such as the 70-200 G Master, the 85 1.4, that needs to kind of go through a software update or a firmware update, and it'll give you that performance as well.
Okay, and we did have a question about the 100 to 400 and the 200 to 600, and I can't see, it's too tiny for me. But can you say for wildlife photography if those lenses would keep up?
Yep.
Yes, they're on the list.
Yay!
One thing to talk about these lenses as well is that a lot of times we talk about lenses in reference to resolving power for higher megapixel cameras. But in reality, these lenses, when Sony started designing them, as what Patrick was talking about, the different actuators, the reason they chose those actuators was because now they're considering photo and video. So for video, you want less vibration, you want them to be silent, you want them to be quick. So a lot of these newer lenses that you were saying that you were trying some older lenses, the newer lenses definitely have these actuators, and much more for the performance that they give are designed for photo and video.
Yeah, and if you look at my video, even when I'm auto focusing, there's no breathing in this lens at all. So it's pretty amazing. That's the 2470 G Master.
That's
If
right.
I move back and forth, you can see how smoothly it actually tracks me, and no breathing, right?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you there,
No
Dave.
worries. I have a question about the media you guys are using. You guys are using the CF Express Type A cards. Now, I like the idea of having two cards that are identical for the camera. And I like that you can use them as an SD card as well if you want it, if you don't sort of have older cards you want to work with. Was it a size decision to go with instead of going with the other type of CF Express?
Yes, if you're talking about the larger CF Express Type B, then 100% that would increase the size of the camera itself. So that's why the CF Express Type A cards were designed. And even to go along with that, when we were talking about the 7S3, we were talking about these memory cards as, well, you don't really need to get those cards unless you're shooting in a very specific video mode, which is the SNQ 4K 120. But for all other modes, for other 4K modes, you can just go get ahead with a V90 card and shoot with that. In this case, with the Alpha 1, I almost recommend people to get a CF Express Type A card. And even for the shooting, so for myself, I shoot fashion and portraits. And definitely when I'm shooting, especially when there's movement involved, to clear the buffer, it's within seconds. So you'll never outrun the buffer. But when I've had the camera up to my hand and I've been shooting, and then I bring it down and I'm seeing 60, 50, 40, 30 clear. And it's the first time that I've ever been able to see a buffer clear that quickly. Within about 5 seconds, it's clear. So that was a wow moment for me, but it was specifically because I was using the CF Express Type A cards.
Yeah, I mean, as resolution is increasing and frames per second are increasing, that whole workflow speed is critical.
Yeah, now you mentioned that it was partially done to keep the size of the camera down, and I have to ask, I'm sure you guys can answer this as to why Sony decided to keep this camera still so small. I know it's part of kind of the ethos behind the brand, but with it being a flagship camera, and I think it almost could have been a bigger model, it could have maybe taken a bigger battery or even had an integrated grip to kind of match the aesthetic of what people would expect a flagship camera with this capability to have. So why still go with the smaller size?
My answer would be because we still offer things like the vertical grip. It does take the same vertical grip as the S3, as the R4, and the 9 Mark II. So if you did want to get that look of the robust type of camera there, you can definitely get that. I myself, I really like the vertical grip, so I would definitely just get that for this. But in terms of performance, and maybe even Patrick can talk on the battery, because it's just the power management system of the camera is so well that I guess we didn't really need to have it. I myself, even though I use a vertical grip, I rarely put 2 batteries in the vertical grip. I usually just keep to the 1 because that would last the entire photo shoot as well. So normally with those bigger cameras, especially since they had those motor drive, they were very demanding on the amount of power that they needed, and especially if you're going to employ that motor drive. But in this case, you can run through the entire memory card before you're ever going to take a dent out of the battery. So again, there was no aesthetic reason to make it a bigger camera, and because of its power management system, I think that it was okay to keep it the same size.
I think it also speaks, I'm just going to jump in here, guys.
Yeah.
It also speaks just to the portability of the camera. If you're looking at landscape photography or wildlife photography, landscape photography, or travel photography, and as much as we're graded by code at the moment, I myself have found as I've moved from a DSLR system into the mirrorless, when I'm doing travel photography, it's all about the lightweight nature of the camera. Now, looking at the A1 with the capabilities of the sensor, the speed, and everything else, it's sort of a duo. But being able to have that packed into a small backpack with some of those key G Master lenses when you're either out in the bush, hunting for that landscape shot, or you're traveling and you're trying to get through customs with all your stuff, it's always easier to be lighter, smaller, and more portable. So that will lend to it as well.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
And then another question that I was really curious about is with high ISO performance. So when you have the A7S3, which is kind of touted as being the best low light camera, How does this camera actually compare? How do you guys rate them? Is this above the A7S III or below?
Well, I definitely think the A7S III is a more sensitive camera than the A1, the Alpha 1 when you're talking about low light performance. But you have the advantage of 12 megapixels with a BSI chip compared to a 50 megapixels. But the advantage that the Alpha 1 has is that not only is it a backside illuminate chip, it's also a stacked CMOS sensor. So your signal to noise ratio is a lot better, right? Than if everything's equal. So the Alpha 7S is more sensitive in low light, but the Alpha 1 has an advantage of having that stacked CMOS chip, so that you have a lot less noise to your signal ratio, right?
Absolutely, that sounds good. And then when you look at all the cameras that are now available, how do you set this apart as the flagship camera if you were to take out the fact that it can shoot 30 frames per second and 8K? Can you guys speak to some of the other features that that the cameras has that make it a flagship camera a step above everything else?
Okay, maybe I'll start, and then we'll kind of go round table there. I think we all have our different disciplines, but I've been working a lot with different photographers, like unit photographers, government photographers, that demand the silent mode. And of course, one of the biggest problems with shooting silently is banding, right? Mm-hmm. And this was one of the things that makes this camera flagship. One is the readout speed, how fast the information reads out from the sensor to the processor. The faster that reads out, the faster shutter speeds we can use without having any banding. And also along with that is that we have now an anti-flicker mode while using that silent shutter. We had it with mechanical shutter in the past, but now with the faster processing and then of course the newer software in here, when we have pushed the shutter, we can actually detect that fluctuation from pulse width modulation, and we can adjust shutter speed to very, very precise point where it minimizes or eliminates that banding. Right.
I think that for myself, I use a lot of flash photography. So the two main features, flash is going to be the electronic shutter, the very first camera that you can shoot with flash in the electronic shutter mode. That was an experience that I wasn't even expecting. It was almost like the first time when we were introducing the A9 Mark I, when blackout-free shooting was like, you had to see it for you to believe what you were seeing, almost like you were recording video, but you were taking pictures. And this was very similar when I was putting electronic shutter mode, shooting at the sync speed of 1/200th, and actually seeing the flash hitting the subject. Normally when I'm shooting a subject, I usually ask the subject, you know, did the flash fire, did it not fire? Because during the time that the mechanical shutter is closing is when the flash fires, and I don't see that. So being able to see it live, that was for me a wow moment. And so the electronic shutter with flash, that was a big, big deal. And again, it's the first camera to have that. Now, if you do go to mechanical shutter, now it increases to 1/400th of a second. In APS-C mode, it goes to 1/500th of a second. And we've had some sports photographers that have been able to take it up to 1/800th of a second. So it's just incredible performance of flash utilizing with the Alpha 1. Again, it's kind of a world's first.
I'm going to add to Jadu's mention about the flash as well. And myself, I'm a wedding and portrait photographer as well. And having the ability to take that flash up to 1/400th of a second, or even in APS-C mode where you're bringing it up to 1/500th of a second, really kind of saves you the trouble of getting into like high-speed sync territory and trying to figure out what flashes and triggers work and all that kind of stuff. And this is just a little bit more straightforward. You dial it in and you know you're good to go, and it just starts to work for you. But aside from that, because Jadu did a great job explaining that anyways, one of the things that I'm actually new to as far as the chapters of photography that are yet to be discovered by myself is wildlife photography. I've actually gotten the chance to play around with wildlife photography using some of our Sony cameras as well, just recently at an event that we did. We did an event where we got to play around with some birds and all that kind of great stuff. And a lot of the times people were asking, is there an option for having a real-time tracking for birds cameras. And now with the Alpha 1, we have included that in as far as the still photography mode goes as well. So in still photography mode, not only is the overall real-time tracking improved by 30%, but they've actually added the real-time tracking for birds as well in still mode. And I think it's starting to kind of become my new favorite thing, because the first time I actually had the experience of shooting wildlife photography, it was with an A9 and all that stuff, but it was just very therapeutic, if you may. It was just like, wow, okay, I've always been, caught up in a conversation where people are telling me things like, we go out and 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I never really understood what was, behind that. And when I got to try it, and now with this, the real-time tracking being added for the animal mode as well, I think this is definitely amongst one of my top features of the camera for sure.
Okay, maybe we'll get to a few questions from the audience. One of the questions is from Michael Kaplan, and he was wondering about if you can put in SD and
CF Express
sorry,
Type A.
CF Express Type A cards in at the same time. I'll let you guys answer this though.
So you can choose, but you have to choose which slot. So you can't physically put the two cards into the exact same slot. But you can have a CF Express in slot A and a SD card in slot B.
Yes, you can't have 4 cards in at the same time. You can have maximum 2.
Now, if you do that and you have an old SD card, does the camera only write as fast as the slowest card?
It depends on the writing mode that you picked. You could, if you picked simultaneous to each one and everything to both as a redundancy, then I guess it would write slower to the slower card, right, Jadu?
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you were simultaneous, it would default to the slower of the two cards. If you were just going standard, which is to card A first and then to card B, then it would be the faster card. It would take advantage of that speed, and then once it gets to the slower card, it'll slow down.
You could always do RAW plus JPEG, and then RAW to the CF Express A, and then JPEG to the slow. If you had like a class 4 card, for example. That's probably one of the things I would do. So you have a JPEG for redundancy, and then RAWs on your CF Express A. So that's probably how I would address that.
No, fair
And
enough.
you do have the height files as well. Is that how you say it? Height?
Yeah.
HIF?
The high efficiency.
Height?
HIF, eh?
FA.
FA.
Let's make it a Canadian thing. FA.
We have another question about the body of the camera. If you'd be able to use the same cage after accessories as the A9 II or the A7R IV.
So I'll start off with that real quick. I just wanted to mention that the battery grip is the exact same from the A9 Mark II, the S3, and the R4 as well, and that's the one that Jadu was showing just a couple of seconds ago. Jadu, if you want to hold that up again just one more time so everybody could see that. That is the absolutely the same battery grip as well. And as far as some of the accessories go, guys, the microphones, the hot shoe is a MI hot shoe, a multi-interface hot shoe as well. So that does mean that you're able to connect some of our new microphones, like you can see up on the screen right now. Actually, a couple of us are actually using those microphones as we speak right now. And the great thing about it is you put it up on top of the hot shoe, and there's no additional wires or cables that actually, go into the camera itself. You put it on, and because that device itself is an analog to digital analog audio interface, essentially, it does all the algorithms just on body itself, and it's great for people like vloggers or run and gun style shooting. Of course, we already talked about the battery grip as well, but the flash as well. These are just some of the accessories that are available to you as well.
So I don't know about the actual cages, because that would then have to deal with the connectivity to the camera. And of course, where this camera has the full HDMI connection and all the audio inputs might be different, located on the side of the camera from the other cameras like the 9 Mark II or the 7S3. So that the cage might be the one thing that might have to be unique to the Alpha 1.
Yeah. So as side inputs are, it's the same as the A9 Mark II, a little bit different layout than the. So this one is a 9. Well, let me just move the strap away. Yeah, so it's the same orientation as a 9. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
It's looking good there, yeah.
But different than the S3.
And Pat, just to add on to that, can we actually just go over some of those ports real quick, just so in case people are listening and not looking at the video? I think there's a Ethernet port there. There's a USB 3.0, 3.2 power supply as well. There's an Ethernet port, a full HDMI as well, right?
Yeah, so great for video people. There's a full-size HDMI,
Yeah.
2 USBs, the micro and the USB-C, a microphone 3.5 in, and earphone out, and then there's your Ethernet, and then here's your flash sync.
Plastic, yeah.
That's awesome. Can we talk a little bit about connectivity?
Sure.
With the A9 II, of course, we thought this is going to be an excellent photojournalist camera by adding a lot of those features. Is there anything that the A9 II had that the Alpha 1 doesn't, or vice versa? Like, is there anything that you gain in terms of connectivity with the new model?
That's a good question.
Peter, I think you knew. Yeah, there you go.
The LAN port is faster. The Ethernet plug is faster than before. Not in terms of gigabit per second, but in terms of how it's processed, so it transmits faster. And the antenna for the Wi-Fi is also much faster than before, so it's quite enhanced in terms of sending files to the FTP server, for instance.
Yeah, and one of the landscape photographers, when I was showing him the camera, he normally has his setup where he connects his cell phone to the camera. So he was shooting with the R4, and then as soon as he connected to the Alpha 1 and walking around and setting up his shot, he just mentioned it just in passing. The Wi-Fi connection is amazing. It's not laggy. Immediately when he was touching the screen, he knew exactly that it was firing off. So he really liked the fact that, and I didn't even have that information at the time, but just in practice, he was saying that the Wi-Fi connection was excellent. So I was like, okay, great.
Now, a question I get asked all the time about cameras is, if you're using USB-C, can you power the camera through it?
Yes, you can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Actually-
it supports power delivery too, so it can absorb enough power to power itself without using the internal battery. So you do need to have an internal battery, but it will not drain while using a compatible power delivery accessory.
Yeah.
What
So
about
I've used
using a
both.
dummy battery, like a V-mount battery?
Yeah, you could. If you wanted to use that USB for something else, then you definitely could. But with power delivery, I don't think it really it's probably a lot more convenient just to do it through USB-C. I've used the older non-power delivery USB charger before, and the battery discharges a little bit faster than the battery can charge. But with power delivery, no problem at all.
Okay, see if there's any more questions here. We have got a few questions about the delivery date. I believe that there's been some notifications going out within Canada and the US about it being extended by about 5 more days just due to the crazy weather that happened throughout North America. So can you just speak to what to expect in Canada for the new delivery date?
Well, touch base with this one, guys. It's the revised date is now March 9th. We just had a few shipping delays out of the U.S. from our U.S. warehouse. So there is going to be a few days delayed, but trust me, once they want you to do their hands.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Anthony, your mic is really
Distorted?
distorted.
What he said is that our delivery date has moved from March 4th to March 9th, and that's just due to the delays based because of weather in the U.S.
The polar vortex.
Yeah,
We sent it
unfortunately.
down there. Sorry. No, that was really tragic. I'm a terrible person. Well, anyways, I mostly just want to wrap things up a little bit and just talk about the elephant in the room, which is the price point of this camera. And I wanted to say a few things about my opinion on this. First of all, if you look at 3 different cameras that Sony has right now that are kind of the top end models that all have their own specialty. We have the A7R4, which is the high resolution camera. We have the high speed A9 Mark II, and then we have the A7S III. And honestly, I think that this camera basically kicks the cream out of all of them because it is able to do something a little bit better than each model. And so I'm wondering if you guys can all take a crack at just talking about how it's able to do that and why you think it justifies in Canada the $8,500 price point.
Should I start?
Yeah, go for it. Just go around the table.
I'm always the first one.
Why is it expensive?
Well, Actually, one of the customers I dealt with a lot when the Alpha 9 Mark II came out was wildlife, specifically bird photographers. And that type of bird photographer always bought two cameras, the Alpha 9 Mark II and the A7R4. Actually, I dealt with some of the customers from the camera store, and we with the 600 mil and those two specific cameras. So this one camera literally replaces both of them. So that not only do you have a fast speed camera to track that random motion from something like a bird, but also be able to give you the high resolution of the A7R4. But if you're talking about price, one of the I guess I shouldn't talk about that, but one of the most advanced, the secret sauce, the secret sauce in all of our Sony cameras is really, really the heart of the camera, which is the sensor. And the sensor is what gives us all the capabilities of the camera. Everything else is just to assist that, like the processing and etc. 50 megapixels on that stack CMOS sensor, being able to write out the speed so quickly, that's state of the art, right? So that's with state of the art. Of course, it's more expensive, but it also replaces multiple cameras as well. So that's my take.
So you're recommending people buy two of them?
Oh yeah, definitely. Me actually.
Well, some photographers that I cater to, they as soon as they tried it, they said, well, now I just want to replace my A9 IIs by 3 A1s. So it's as simple as that. It's a game changer. And just like Patrick said, the building and developing and making that sensor is quite an achievement. Yeah. But to be able to extract everything the sensor is doing, you need the processing power and the algorithms to produce everything that the camera can do. So I think that even though the price is high, it's fully justified for the performance that you get with the A1.
And sorry, just to add on the cinema side of things, I mean, with the 8K abilities, if you looked at it compared to a lot of other cinema cameras out there, it has a lot of that capability as well. And so if you compared it to other cinema cameras, it's actually priced not that high, and it just becomes this complete package. And one of the things that we talked about in our preview was that the exciting thing with Sony is that often some of that technology will eventually trickle down throughout the lineup, and so it's a very good thing. Even if you're maybe not in the market for this camera, it's a good thing to know that that they have this top level technology available.
Yeah,
we're in a society right now, of course, where everybody is asking, and what else can it do? And what else can it do? Like in this case, the Alpha 1, it's what else do you want it to do? Because it's already at the top performance, and it's giving you all of the features. And like you even said, Evelyn, that you have basically 3 cameras in one. That's the best is what Sony is producing right now. And so I do think it justifies that price. I think that you might have a type of photographer that maybe need it for just one area, and they're the ones that really have to overcome the price point. Yeah. But for another that says, wow, I can utilize like all the features, I can really see myself taking advantage of all those features, it's not going to be a problem for them to purchase the camera.
In my review of that, I refer to it as an all-out attack on state-of-the-art technology.
I love that line, Dave.
But it makes me wonder, what's next? What are we going to do? Are we going to push the envelope? It's going to be 100 megapixels at 60 frames a second? Like, what's the next?
Yeah, come on, Patrick, tell us the future.
Patrick, tell them what's coming up.
When the Alpha 9 came out, we're like, wow, what can get better than this? The autofocus was faster than anything else in the market. What it did was more than what anything else did in the market. Then all of a sudden you came up with a camera that doubled the speed and doubled the capabilities of the camera. So you don't know where we're going to go.
I remember when the A9 Mark I came out, and the 2 features that I wanted for that camera was for it to have 2 memory card slots and a bigger battery than the W series battery. Those were my 2 main requirements. So you can imagine that when they announced the A9 Mark I and they gave us the laundry list of features, I was like blown away. Because all I really cared about was, can you just give me 2 card slots and a larger battery? That's all I want. And then they gave us all So
Now, I'm old enough to remember when 10 frames a second was like the standard for sports photography. Hey, that was
Don't mention that,
That was the
Dave.
benchmark, right? Now,
Yeah.
you know, and I thought, okay, 10 is all I ever need. But I like 20 frames per second. Was there a lot of demand to push for 30 frames a second, or is it just because you could?
I don't think we can assume to speak for the engineers, but I guess you could say. Sorry, go ahead, Pierre.
I'm sorry, I just, there's one photographer that you guys probably know, Christopher Dawes. He said that
Oh yeah.
photographers who shoot birds, they want to get that 30 frames per second because the wings and the head is moving so fast that sometimes just in the in-between frame is the one they want.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've
And
learned
even
how to
weddings,
be
I
different.
remember
Rather than just mashing the shutter down, right? You learn how to feather a little bit more.
I was going to say that even shooting weddings, when I was shooting weddings with the A9, I would increase it to the 20 frames per second for things like the kiss. Like, I just wanted to be able to select the frame that I wanted and not, you know, hope and guess that I got the moment just before and the moment just after. So again, with 30 frames per second, it's just hard to miss the moment.
Yeah, I do like the fact that it's there, whether you want to take advantage of it or not, but you have it.
You have the option.
You have it.
We have a question here about the A9 lineup, and I'm kind of curious about this too. Is the Alpha 1 going to run at the same time, and are you maintaining the A9 and the A9 II in the lineup for the foreseeable future?
From what we know, yes, they're all going to run concurrently. And I think we've already touched upon this, and I think you have too. The Alpha 1 kind of encompasses everything for certain types of photographers. If you only needed speed and you didn't need 50 megapixels, then the Alpha 9 is the perfect camera for you, right? If you need it for just video and you really wanted that low light, then maybe the Alpha 7S is really the camera for you. So I think one of the things I've seen through Sony is that diversity of the lineup, and there really is a specific camera for every type of photographer out there. And now we have a camera that's for everybody, right?
Yeah.
As long as you can afford it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Well, to wrap things up, I'll mention it one more time that if you're interested in getting the Alpha 1, even if you're on the order list already, you can take advantage of the Cage program if you're in Canada. And so the link for all the information is in the description. And we love Cage. They're awesome. They're such a good team. And so they'll set up a virtual appointment with you. They'll go through all of your dusty old camera stuff. Like, honestly, pull it all out because you can get cash for it or you can trade it in. And if you buy Sony products from the camera store between March 15th and March 20th, using your Cage credit, you can actually get up to a 25% bonus. And so if you're trading in a bunch of stuff, it's really worthwhile.
Yeah, if you don't want to deal with the used market, and you don't want to sell stuff, strangers in parking lots,
No
just
creepers.
saying. It's a fantastic and a really easy way to make it work.
Right.
Yeah, so we have that coming up. So the links are below. And I guess just want to ask if there's anything else you guys want to add to wrap the evening up.
I think really this is a camera that you're gonna have to put into your hands and really go out and shoot with this because like we were saying earlier, what else can this camera do? What else can this camera do? The truth of the matter is that this camera can actually do everything that you want it to do plus more. And I was reading the comments as well, and someone said that it's full of features. Like, that's a lot of features to take in, and it really is. To be honest with you, the camera is really packed with just so much technology and features that until you're not comfortable going out with it and shooting with it and familiarizing yourself with everything that's going on, it's then when you see the performance and how much of a power horse this thing really is and what it's capable of doing, right? Like, I mean, to add to that, to be honest with you, the 8K unlimited recording for me it's a game changer. Like 8K unlimited without the camera overheating or anything like that, game changer for me. Absolutely fantastic. And taking it up to 1/400th or 1/500th of a second sync speed, like we were talking about before, being a portrait photographer, sometimes working with, getting those dramatic clouds and all that kind of stuff, that makes a big it's a big difference on how you shoot, how your workflow changes. So I think, yeah, the camera is definitely at that price point, but when you pick it up and really go through the bells and whistles that the camera has to offer, you really will determine for yourself why it's really called the Alpha 1. You know what I mean? Like, it is that great of a camera to kind of work with. But
Yeah, we should give a round of applause for all of the engineers, honestly, because they've done some groundbreaking work. And how about that menu system?
Finally, yeah.
Because
that's great.
we loved the menu system upgrade in the A7S III, and seeing it in the Alpha 1 is just perfect, seals the deal.
Yeah, you get full touch operations with that as well. And keep in mind that with the menu system, you also do get the My Menu tab as well, which is completely customizable. So not only can you obviously customize the entire camera as far as for your C1 to C4 buttons, but you also have that My Menu tab that has been redesigned and configured as well, where it's just quick access, ready to go, and straightforward as well. So.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Well, thanks so much, guys. We hope that you enjoyed joining us for our first live event that Dave and I have ever done like this. So thanks for your patience and everything as well. And we hope we can do this again soon, because this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we appreciate your answers, right?
Yeah.
You guys are awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for hosting it, Dave, and I'll be by the store for any microphone at some point.
Sounds
Thanks,
good,
Anthony.
Anthony. We miss you.
All right.